Hello, this is Garrett with eMaint, and I'm here today to present the monthly web workshop. Our topic for today will be Advanced PM Setup. I'm going to go ahead and get started. We'll talk about some housekeeping items first. So this session will be recorded. In the next couple of days, we will upload this to eMaint University. So if there's any content that you want to revisit, you can navigate to eMaint University and you'll be able to find it there. During this webinar, your phones will be muted and you will have the ability to type questions at any time into the chat window. And at the end of the session, I will go ahead and answer those questions. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's talk about our topics for today. So today we're going to discuss how to set up meter-based and calendar-based nested PMs. We'll also do an overview of some other things you can do with PMs. We'll talk about the different ways that you can suppress PMs from generating. We'll talk about some configurations where you can set them up to have a specific day of the week or a week of the month configuration set up, and also how to use seasonal PM generator as well. So let's go ahead and start talking about nesting. So nesting is what allows you to have one PM schedule supersede another PM schedule for the same asset. So what that means is when PMs are due to generate on the same day or the same interval, the higher level PM will generate and the lower level PMs will skip to their next interval. That is provided that they are assigned to the same nesting group. Now, there's two types of nesting that we can employ. There is meter-based and there is calendar-based. And a side note here would be that the PM schedules need to be on the same cycle. So when I go ahead and present my examples, I will touch on that point a little bit deeper. All right, so we're going to start off talking about the nesting of PMs, and we're going to do it on a meter-based PM schedule. So in order to enable the nesting of meter-based PMs, a meter nesting group must be created. So as you can see down here in my example, I have this field titled meter nesting group, okay? And I have a value here. I entered in the text demo. And what I want you to note here is that the value entered in the field will be used to group the PM schedules together for that asset. So when I have my asset, if I create 3, 4 different PM schedules and they all have the same meter nesting group value, then the system will go ahead and pool those together. And that's how it knows which ones need to have nesting applied to them. So that field that I was referring to is a system name of nesting MTR. It is a character type field. And I'm showing this to you because there may be an off chance that when you go to the form editor to try to find this field, it may not be in your account out of the box. So if you need to set that up, this is the information that you need to have. The system name needs to be nesting MTR, just like it shows there on the screen. And it needs to be a character type field. Description, you're free to put whatever you want here, whatever makes the most sense to you. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's get logged into eMaint and let's take a look at this in action. All right. So I'm going to go to my meter-based example here. Okay. So I'm here. I've got my asset set up, and you're going to note here that I have a PM schedule created over here, and I have 3 separate PMs created. Okay. I have a 250, a 500, and a 1,000 unit PM schedule set up. Let's go in and take a look at the 250 real quick. So I want to point out that once I get here, notice I've got my meter nesting group is set to demo. Okay, so just remember that this is the value here that is going to be used to pool all the PMs that you want to nest together. This is how that all functions. All right, so What I want you to note here is that on the rest of this PM, it's just like any other PM. You know, we've got our produce units over here. We've got our units here measuring hours. Our meter type is running. Okay, and I've gone ahead and entered a value of static in here. So one thing I want to point out is that when you do set this up, if you do want nesting to work, you need to make sure that your meter frequency type is set to static. If it were to be set to shadow, then the generation of PMs could come out of sync, which would then break nesting. Okay, so let's go back here to our list view. And you can see here, like I was showing, we do have two other ones here. We have a 500 and a 1000. Okay, let's go in and take a look there. So notice on my 500, everything is exactly the same, except my units have increased. I've bumped this one up to 500. All right, my occurrence description is the same as hours, and my meter type is running. So again, make sure that these values are all the same, static, running, and hours, and that you have your units and increments that are going to overlap. Okay, so because when it comes to nesting, what we need to have happen is we need to have these PMs occur at the same time, and then the system will go ahead and apply nesting and make the decision as to which one is the proper one to be generating. Okay. Another thing to note here is in order to track when we do generate these, I've made my brief description here, level 2. Level 1 was the one that was the value I assigned for the first one. And if we go hop into the 1000 here, you'll see this one here is level 3. The only change that I've made here is that my units have gone up to 1000 here. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and let's walk through the process of showing you how this works in action. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead here. I'm going to enter in some meter readings, which are going to force some PMs to be generated. Okay, so right now my meter reading is sitting at 2000 as my last value. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in a new value here. Okay, I'm going to choose to increment it by 250 hours. All right, let me go ahead and add that. And notice that the system has gone ahead and generated a PM work order of 943. Okay, let's hop out and let's take a look here. All right, so if you look down here on my PM schedules, work order number 943 is my produce 250 level 1. Okay, so we've now got the level 1 PM to generate. So let's repeat the process. Let's do another incremental meter reading, again sticking with the 250. Okay, let's go ahead and add that. Okay, so now PM work order 944 is generated, and if we look down here in our columns, 944 is associated with the level 2 PM. So we've done 2 iterations now, a 250 and then another 250, which has gotten us to 500. All right, so let's keep along with the example here. So if we bump this one to 2750, then we should be back to our level 1 PM should be the one that is in the cycle. And as you can see here, PM work order 945 has been generated. And yes, there we go. 945 is back associated with my level 1. So in this exercise, we've gone ahead and we've increased this, 750 units so far. So let's go ahead and add on another 250, which will get us to 3000. And as long as we've got this properly set up, then my level 3 PM should generate here for the 1000. And here we go, PM work order 946. Here we go, it's my level 3. So let's go ahead and look at the work order history, and you'll see here when we walk through this process, we had a level 1 get generated 250, then another 250 bumped us to 500, which caused the level 2 to occur, and then another increment of 250 would have gotten us to what, 750 of our 1000, but that bumped it back down to level 1 because of nesting, and then finally the last increment of 250 pushed us to the 1000 mark, which caused the level 3 PM to be generated. Okay, so that's going to conclude our conversation on the meter-based nesting. But before I move on to calendar-based, what I want to point out is it's very important that users that are adding meter readings, people generating work orders, or managing your assets, that they understand and that they are aware that you have nested PMs in your accounts. They also need to be mindful of the possible ramifications when making adjustments to PMs that are part of a nesting group. You know, if I were to go ahead and do any kind of editing here, let's say on the level 2 one here, for example, and I didn't know that we had nesting applied, that could go ahead and actually break the nesting and affect the the PM generation going forward. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about our next example of nesting, and that is calendar-based nested PM schedule. So pretty similar to the meter-based. The concept is the same, but the way that we set it up does vary a little bit. So let's take a look here. So to do calendar-based PMs, we're going to use 2 fields to control the nesting in this case. We're going to have a nesting group, and we're going to have a nesting level. Okay, as you can see here are the 2 fields on the screen, my nesting group and my nesting level. Okay, so again, I just want to point out some examples of the fields here. This nesting group field, this is what pulls your PM schedules together for the specific asset. So that's what's going to do your grouping, what's going to keep them organized, and let the system identify which ones that you're trying to keep together. The system name is nesting GRP, and it is a character type field. Okay, and then the other field is the nesting level field. So this is the field that determines which PM is generated. So whatever value I put in here will be evaluated based on the nesting group first off, and then which value has the highest, which field has the highest value is the one that's going to, I use the term win, so that would be the one that's going to be generated. So 1 would be the lowest possible one that I could have, and in this case here I have my field size set to 4, so 999, and 9,999 would be the largest I could have. So system name, nesting, LVL, and numeric type. These fields should be in your account, but on the off chance they're not, this is how you can go ahead and generate them. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to eMaint here, and let's look at our next example. So I'm going to pull up my calendar-based PM schedule here. Okay, so here we are. I've got 3 schedules pulled up here. I've got a 1-day, a 7-day, and a 14-day PM schedule set up here. Okay, so let's hop in here and let's take a look at the 1-day. All right, so we're here, and notice I've got my nesting group. I've set it to demo, and I've made my nesting level 1. I followed the same naming convention as I did in the meter-based example. My brief description here is level 1 because this is the lowest level PM that I have for this demonstration. All right, so let's go and look at the next one. So here we are. I've got my level 2, and it is a 7-day. So notice no real difference here between setting up a nested PM schedule as opposed to a regular calendar-based PM schedule without nesting. I'm still going to have my produce every value here. I'm going to have my frequency here. The calendar frequency type does need to be set to static, just like it did in meters. Again, if we were to have shadow, then that would cause these dates to change based on when the work order was closed, and that can cause the PMs to become out of sync, because then we would no longer have that overlap of the PMs generating on the same day. So just keep that in mind. And another point I'd like to make is here for my calendar frequency, I've chosen to set these all as days. Now there's no requirement by the system for you to keep all these frequencies the same units. You could have a week, or you could have months as well, commingled with days. The only thing to keep in mind is that you need to make sure that these PMs are going to have a collision, that they're actually going to generate both on the same day, and that's what's going to cause nesting to kick in. Okay, all right, so we're going to go back and let's take a look at our third one here. Okay, and lastly, we'll look at our 14-day. Nothing really different here, except for my units have increased here. I've bumped my nesting level up to 3. So in our example, based on what I've explained earlier, a higher nesting level is going to be the one that trumps any of the lower number ones. So this one would have precedence on the occurrence when the 1 day and then that 7-day, and then this one would all occur at the same time. So we'll go ahead and walk through an example. I'll show you some PM forecasting generation, and we can see how the nesting will kick in. But before I do, I need to point out that there is one major difference between calendar and meter-based nested PMs, and that is, if you recall, when we did our meter uploads, that the nesting kicked in automatically, immediately. So I went from 250 to 500, and the system identified that the 500 was next in line, and made that suppress the 251. When it comes to calendar based, the system actually needs to run through one full cycle of generation until it will actually apply nesting. So what that means is, when I'm doing this, in the case that I have, example that I have here given, what would happen is the system would go ahead and it's going to generate, the first day one, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and then when I got to the 7th one, the system's actually going to generate 2 work orders. It's going to generate the level 1 day, and then it's also going to generate the level 2 7-day. And that's just going to happen one time. Once it goes through that cycle, it will then have the nesting program to it on the back end, and it will know how to apply it going forward. So that's just something to take into account. All right. So let's go ahead and show you how this works. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go to my PM generation screen. Okay. So we're going to come over here. We're going to generate some PM work orders. So the date I'm going to go out for is the 27th. Okay. Now, this PM schedule that I picked, it's already been running in the background for a couple of days now. So my produce every is set to next happen tomorrow. Okay. And then after that, it's actually going to hit its 7-day mark. So the system's going to go ahead and generate the level 2 7-day one. And then let's go ahead and let's count. So we've hit 7 days, and now we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And here we are on our 7th day. And now the system knows that it should be, we've now hit that 14-day mark, and that since this one has that number 3 listed in my nesting level value, it knows that that one trumps the 7-day and the single-day one here. So let me just bump this out a little bit further to kind of drive that point home. So remember, we had our 14-day one. Okay, so let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then on the 7th day, the system knows to suppress the single day, and it knows that the 14-day one is where we fall in the sink. Okay. All right. So that concludes my example here on the calendar-based calendar-based nested PMs. Just remember, like I said, when you go through this, the system's going to have to go through one full cycle before it will apply nesting. So you're going to get some duplicate work orders just through that one, iteration through. But after that, it'll work as designed. Okay. All right. So moving on, we're going to talk about some advanced PM setups. So in your account, we do have the ability, some different options to suppress PMs. You do have the option to suppress. We have a PM suppress button, which will suppress all PMs in your account. We can also apply this to only calendar or meter-based PMs as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at these 3 different options that we have. Okay, so here we go. The first we're going to look at here is my suppress PM field. So when you're in your account, you may have seen this before. And what this is going to do is if I toggle it on, it's going to cease the generation of PM work orders. And when I say cease, it doesn't matter if the system is trying to do it in the background, part of its normal PM generation functionality, or if you try to manually generate these. This is what I'm going to call a hard stop. It's going to stop, suppress the PM from being generated. All right. So keeping along lines with the suppression settings that we have, let's go and look at the next one here. So this one here is going to be our suppress PM calendar. And what this does is it provides an alternative to shadow frequency, for your shadow-based frequency on PMs, and it's going to, help prevent the overlap of PMs. So for those of you who are not familiar with shadow, what a shadow would mean is when you close the work order, the new generation date would start from that actual closing date. Whereas opposed to static, it's always, occurs every 7 days without regard to when you close the work order. Shadow one actually moves. So if I were to close a work order on the, let's say the 12th of October, and it was forecasted for a 1-week generation, the next time that PM would generate would be on the 19th. So that is just the difference between static and shadow. So we can go ahead and we can look at an example that I have here for you. All right. So here we are. I'm in here at a PM. I've already gone ahead and selected the suppress PM calendar option. That's what I've done. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to manually generate this one. All right. So what I want you to keep in mind is that what this is going to do is it's going to stop any other PM generation from occurring once we hit the calendar frequency requirement. So let's go ahead and manually generate, and we'll just see what happens. So system's letting me know PM 1008 is going to be generated. Okay, so I've gone ahead and it's made work order 869. All right, so let's go back. And let's look. So now what you can see is that the system has gone ahead and it has applied the suppress PM value and it's set it to true. So now the system will no longer, whether it be manually or automatically, generate PMs as long as this has an open work order on it. The nice thing that the system does is it lets you know the reason for the suppression. As you can see here, the system has automatically populated in the work order number 869 that is currently open, and that's what's causing this calendar-based PM to be suppressed. All right. So I can go ahead and close out the work order, and once I do, you'll see that the system will go ahead and it will uncheck the suppression field here. All right, but what I want to point out is, you know, what's the reason for doing this? Okay, so the reason why we're doing this is because what's going to happen is when we, if the system, if we were just to apply, you know, the regular, you know, static-based PMs, and this work order was open for longer than a week, then the system is going to go ahead and let's see, on 10/31, it would just go ahead and automatically generate a new work order, is how that would work. So let's talk about a use case. Let's say you've got a contractor who's only in your plant, you know, once a week. You know, he's there on, you know, every Friday. So you want to ensure that all the work orders that you're writing for this PM schedule occur on the day that he's there. All right. So by turning this on, that's going to go ahead and preserve that the generation date would always occur on the same day of the week. In this case, since we're using a produce every 1 week. All right. So let's go ahead and let's close out that work order. There it is, 869. Okay, actions, close out. Okay, let's go back to the PM. Okay, so here we are. We're back on our PM, and notice that the switch my form here, and notice that the suppression has now been unchecked, but the value that I entered here, the true value I've entered, has stayed on here. So that's telling the system that I always want to suppress this via calendar. And as you can see, the system has operated the way that we have requested by applying that suppression while the work order is open, and then it takes it off when the work order is closed. Okay, so moving on, we can talk about the meter-based option. So the meter-based option of this is very similar. So again, it provides an alternative to shadow frequency to prevent the overlap of PMs. To enable it, we just simply check on the suppress PM box, and we also need to have the meter frequency type set to shadow. Okay, so let me go ahead. I'm not going to do a real example on this one, but what I can show you, what I can explain to you is how this is going to work. Okay, so you know, this is an option that works along with the meter frequency type of shadow. Okay. And what this is going to do is it's going to ensure that that no PMs are going to be generated while you have an open work order due to any meter increments. So, you know, I can talk about a use case here. Let's say you have a vehicle and it's it hits the time for its 5,000 mile service interval. Okay. Well, the vehicle is currently out of state. Okay, and it's currently out of state, and the guy who's driving the vehicle is still sending in the meter readings. Okay, and let's say, you know, it's been a couple of months, and we've now incurred, you know, over another 5,000 miles on the vehicle. So the system would, based on the meter reading, want to generate another work order. And since we have the suppress PM meter turned on, set to true, then the system is going to do exactly that. It's going to go ahead and it's going to suppress that second PM from generating. If we just, you know, had this set up to not be suppressed, then the system would go ahead, and once we hit that second 5,000 mile, it would go ahead and open up another work order, which would cause a duplicate work order to be created. So, you know, this is a good tool to use when you want to make sure that you keep your open work orders, down, and you have more control over what's going on. All right, so we're going to now move on to some advanced configurations that you can do in the system when it comes to PM generation. All right, so we just talked about suppression. Now let's talk about the advanced configs that you can do. So the first one I'm going to present is what's called the PM day of week and the week of month configuration. So what this configuration will allow you to do is that you can assign PMs to generate on a specific day of the week and also a specific week of the month. So see my example down here. I've gone ahead and I've got a calendar-based PM set up, and I've assigned the values week of month for 4 and the day of week for generation 6. So what that would translate to is when this PM fires, it's going to fire on the fourth week of the month, and it'll be on the 6th day of the week, which would be a Friday. So let's go ahead and see that in action. I'm going to go ahead and get back here into my account. There's my day of week example here. All right, I got my PM schedule set up. Let's go and take a look. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and change these values, and we'll go ahead and generate the PM, and then you'll be able to see how this works. Okay. So we're going to choose the 4th week of the month, and then we're going to choose day number 6, which is going to be equal to Friday. Okay, so what I want you to note now is right now the PM is set to go on 11/5. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit Save Changes. Okay, we've got that there. All right, we're saying next time it generates, it needs to go on the 4th week of the month and on the 6th day, which is a Friday. So let's go ahead and generate this work order, this PM annual work order, I should say. Okay. And now you can see we're here in the work order. Let's go back to the PM, and let's see if it's respected our choice. So yes. So we told the system it wants to be on the the 4th week and the 6th day. So if I pull up my calendar, I could see that the 23rd of November is equal to the 4th Friday of the month. Okay, so that's how that works there. Let's go on and talk about the next option that we have, which is our seasonal PM generation. Okay, so this configuration allows you to suppress PMs for a specified period of time. So the way it works is we have these 2 fields down here, and we're going to set some values on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick the month that we want the suppression to start, and then we want to let it know how long of a break we're taking. So in this example here, we're saying that the PM season ends in November, and we're going to take a break for a period of 4 months. Okay, so let's go back to eMaint here, and we'll look at an example. Okay. All right, so here I am, got my PM schedule set up here. All right, so let's note here that the next PM date is set for 11/2. All right, so and I'm telling the system that, hey, when we've hit the 11th month, that's when my PM generation should end, and I'm going to take a break for a period of 5 months. So If I do the math on that, that would get me to December, January, February, March. That would be April. So my next one following this schedule here would generate on April 2nd. That's what it should do. So let's go ahead here and let's manually generate a work order. All right, so we've got our work order generated. Now let's go back to the PM, and there we go. You can see the system has gone ahead and changed the date to April 17th of 2019, which is exactly in line with the values that we put here. Okay, so I want to point out that if you would like to have any of those two configurations set up, specifically the day of week and week of month one, or the seasonal PM configuration, you'll need to reach out to your account customer success manager or a member of the support team to have those implemented. When it comes to the nested PMs, whether it be calendar or meter based, all you need to do is just add those fields to the form. Same with the case when we were talking about the suppressed PM calendar, suppressed PM meter. Those are fields that are also available, out of the box. Just go to the form editor and then you can apply those to the form. So that's going to conclude our presentation today. I'm going to go ahead and open up the chat window to any questions that anyone may have.